In the meantime, this is going to be an interesting topic to discuss. Let us know what you think about it. Should politicians be subjected to an IQ test in order to be able to serve? There's an interesting editorial
in Congress
in the New York Post today because it stems from Diana DeGette. She was a U.S. representative out of Colorado. Maybe you remember last week we covered some of the things she said with regard to gun control and her knowledge of magazines and ammunition. And many people were upset and quite startled when she said this.
And just very briefly, to your last question, what's the efficacy of banning these magazine clips? I will tell you, these are ammunition. They're bullets. So the people who have those now, they're going to shoot them. And so if you ban them in the future, the number of these high-capacity magazines is going to decrease dramatically over time because the bullets will have been shot and there won't be any more available.
See, it's extraordinary. She actually thinks she is sponsoring federal gun legislation, and yet she doesn't even know what a magazine is. She thinks a magazine is a bullet. And so in this column written for the New York Post yesterday by Glenn Harlan Reynolds, he talks a little bit about how if somebody's going to be in Capitol Hill or in Congress, and you're going to sponsor legislation or you're going to vote on something, you better know what you're talking about. And he closes with this line: politicians getting smarter on their own is probably too much to hope for, but maybe if voters wise up, a smarter crop of politicians will follow.
I mean, wouldn't it be interesting if there's a one-page test to be a citizen where they ask you who founded our nation, what year you have to learn all that stuff, and people who want to become citizens kind of like studying it. I'm just wondering if that would be a natural, not a insult, but if all of a sudden you want to leave the medical profession or leave selling insurance and work in the government, why wouldn't you want a competency test? The American government is a complicated situation. How you get a piece of legislation passed? If you want to serve on a committee, why can't there be a competency test? You can't possibly be good at everything. I'd want that if I was going to be a politician.
That's a great point, because obviously you can't be an expert on every issue, and there's a big difference between an IQ test and a competency test. So people can be brilliant and still be dumb on certain issues.
Well, because I could get nailed on a lot of gun stuff because I didn't grow up around guns.
Sure.
So there's a lot of competency things that people grew up around guns say. I learned that at 8. Well, I never really, had a gun.
You know, if you listen to Rush Limbaugh on the radio, he talks a lot about how there are a lot of low-information voters and listeners out there. You know, they don't really tune into an election until the last moment. This congressperson, obviously, a low-information congressperson when it comes to gun legislation. But if you're going to sponsor legislation, you should know what a magazine is.
Do you remember I forgot the name, but there was a congressman who did not know the difference between Sunni and Shia, and he was on the Foreign Relations Committee in the House. I think he was chairman. And that's a problem.